Hey everyone, this is C Crypto Daily Buzz. Today is February 22nd, 2026. This channel summarizes the most important crypto news for investors in Southeast Asia, including the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and OFW communities using crypto and remittance every day. Let's go through 3 key stories you should know in today's crypto market. Google searches for "Bitcoin is dead" just hit an all-time high. Right as spot Bitcoin ETFs return to net inflows. First, Bitcoin sentiment and flows. Data from Google Trends shows that searches for the phrase "Bitcoin is dead" recently reached their highest level ever, a pattern that on-chain analysts say has often appeared near major fear zones in past cycles. At the same time, US spot Bitcoin ETFs have swung back to net inflows with about $88 million entering the products. The company said the decision was driven by market conditions and limited demand, noting that the token never reached scale. Between retail emotions and professional flows. For investors in Southeast Asia, including traders in the Philippines and Vietnam, I wouldn't assume that Bitcoin is dead just because the internet is shouting it, but I'd also remember that ETF inflows don't remove the risk of more volatility, especially if macro news from the US keeps shaking risk assets. Second, traditional finance stress. A US private credit giant is facing liquidity pressure, and some analysts say this kind of stress has historically set the stage for big Bitcoin bull runs. Reports say Blue Owl Capital has started selling assets, around $1.4 billion in assets, to meet redemption requests, triggering worries that this could be a canary in the coal mine, similar to early credit cracks before the 2008 crisis. Commentators point out that in both 2008 and 2020, aggressive central bank responses to credit crises, zero rates, and massive liquidity eventually helped fuel major Bitcoin bull markets. Once the dust settled, right now, there is no guarantee that policymakers will react in the same way, but markets are clearly nervous. And some investors are already framing BTC as a potential long-term hedge if monetary easing returns. My view for Southeast Asia investors is that this story is more macro than crypto, but it matters if global credit stress escalates. We could first see risk-off selling in coins, and only later, if central banks overreact, the kind of liquidity wave that historically benefited Bitcoin. Third, stablecoin markets. Tether is shutting down its offshore yuan stablecoin CNH due to weak demand, highlighting how hard it is to scale non-dollar stablecoins. Tether has announced that it will discontinue support for CNH, stopping new issuance immediately and planning to end redemptions 1 year after the notice. The company said the decision was driven by market conditions and limited demand, noting that the token never reached scale. This move underscores how dominant dollar-based stablecoins like USDT and USDC remain, even as projects experiment with others. For Southeast Asia, including markets like the Philippines and Indonesia, where remittance and trade are huge, the message is that most liquidity is still likely to stay in dollar-pegged stablecoins, so OFWs and local traders should pay close attention to how regulated dollar stablecoins and local rules evolve over time. To sum up today's stories, searches for Bitcoin is dead are spiking even as US spot BTC ETFs flip back to net inflows. A liquidity crunch at Blue Owl is reminding investors of credit stress, and Tether is closing its offshore yuan stablecoin CNH. This video is for information and education only and is not financial advice. All investment decisions and risks are your own responsibility. If this video was helpful, please subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell. Thanks for watching C Crypto Daily Buzz, and I'll see you in the next episode.